Welcome to all of our plumbers, as well as those in the various industries that are joining us for these Toolbox Talks. We want to say thank you very much, and also to remind everyone about the tips to continually prevent COVID-19. Obviously, this is a feature that we will have in our Toolbox Talks, especially when we come to things like occupational hygiene, because health and safety focuses on both aspects, not just the safety, but also the health of individuals. And so washing our hands, sanitizing, avoid touching our eyes and nose with unwashed hands, adhering to social distancing, or avoiding close contact with people who are sick, covering your cough and sneeze, as well as disinfecting frequently touched objects and surfaces, are things that we can do to constantly prevent other known diseases as well, not just COVID-19. But when it comes to COVID-19, as well as your C19 policy that you will have for your company, please ensure that you do your part to get vaccinated, or have a policy in place for the need of your employees to be vaccinated or not, depending on what your personal decision is. Today's Toolbox Talk is obviously focusing on the last risk that we were looking at for plumbers, which is water risk. And so our safety thought for this week is safety doesn't happen by accident. And we're also going to be introducing, coming up for September, or what we call Safetember, is zero is no accident. That is the slogan that we are going to be using. And that is an initiative by FEM. And we'll discuss more about that coming up in September. So let's get straight into our Toolbox Talk then for this morning. What are the risks that you will face as a plumber when it comes to water? Well, first of all, we know that water is life, because there is life on earth and it cannot be sustained, or it cannot survive without water. It's a precious natural resource. It supports all human, plant, as well as animal life. And we use it for everyday life. Good cup of coffee in the morning. We use it to produce food, manufacture goods, and to sustain our health. Every living cell contains water. In fact, your body is made up of about 65% of water, and most plant tissue is made up of about 90% of water. So again, we know water is life. And as a plumber, you are there in a very vital position of bringing life into a building by bringing clean drinking water into a building, and at the same time taking death out of a building by removing raw sewage or any contaminated water out of a building's water source. Now, properly installed plumbing obviously eliminates the potential for cross-contamination. And when it comes to water, you as a plumber play the integral part on ensuring that all South Africans, in fact, throughout the world, plumbers are responsible for ensuring that water is provided to a household in a clean manner. So there's obviously the design within water, the design within plumbing, to ensure that the risks are mitigated toward the end user. But you as a plumber are still at risk when working with water. And so when it comes to sewers, waste pipes, water tanks, all of this needs you to operate within the space of conducting water from a source to the endpoint, or storing water, or removing water that may be contaminated. So there is no doubt, as a plumber, you are going to come across the use of water either daily or within your lifespan as a plumber. Probably one of the most consistent things about your job is the need to work with water. But water has various risks. For one, it conducts electricity, and so the risk is that you could cause an electric shock with water. It creates a wet surface, and there is slipping hazards. Hot water can cause scalding. Water can also contain bacteria, causing different types of disease. And a large body of water can cause flooding or drowning. Now, when it comes to just natural water, we realize how important it is for life and how important it is for your scope of work as a plumber. But you should also know and understand the risks associated with your work, including with the work around water. So if you are working with any electrical equipment, that could be power tools. If you are an electrician, as we spoke about last week, there's certainly electrical work that you might have to do, especially around geysers or installations that also have the use of water. And so we always want to ensure that housekeeping is our top priority when it comes to anything water related, because housekeeping could eliminate the cause of electric shock by taking away the excess water that might be laying around us. by cleaning up water that might have been spilled, you will also be completely eradicating the wet surface, which causes slips and trips. So what we are seeing here, and this is the slogan that we are moving into, zero is no accident. And this is, again, a slogan that has been developed by FEM in an initiative to bring zero is no accident, health and safety related information to all South Africans. So it's something that we are jumping behind because we fully believe that incidents and accidents can be stopped. They can be prevented. Hot water can prevent scalding. Why? Because you do not need to have access to hot water by direct contact. You can do this through systems, through engineering systems, in order to give you hot water, but at the same time, still prevent scalding. So you can have the hazard without the risk. Water can contain bacteria causing disease. Well, we can still have the water and we can eliminate the bacteria. And large bodies of water, well, we can still have large bodies of water, but we can prevent flooding and drowning, or we can ensure that we are not involved in flooding or drowning, which means that the hazards can still exist. We're not trying to get rid of that. What we are trying to do is mitigate the risk so that you can work safely. But let's look at just 3 of these risks that we have identified with water, that of scalding, of disease, and flooding, because we've spoken about electric shock last week, and we understand slipping and tripping hazards is a form of any working environment, and housekeeping is really going to assist us with that. But scalding, disease, and flooding or drowning are 3 areas that we just want to discuss with you today and see what you can do in the coming weeks to try and prevent this from happening on your site. So when it comes to scalding, the definition of scalding is a form of thermal burn resulting from heated fluids such as boiling water or steam. Now, most scalds are considered first or second degree burns, but as in the picture that you see here, this is a burn from prolonged contact with a heated area. And that prolonged contact can result in third degree burns. Now, you'll notice your SANS code, your SANS 10252-1, clause 661.3, says whenever water is heated, an energy supply to each heater shall be under effective thermostatic control. You know this as a plumber. The SANS standards are clear. As soon as you have heated water, you have to have effective thermostatic control. So scalding can be prevented if our plumbing is done in accordance with the standards. Now, this means you need to have education and training. You need to have the correct resources such as anti-scald valves, thermostatic temperature valves, as well as planning and prevention programs in place to ensure that you're not only educating your staff, but also your clients. The reason being, when the actual installation is completed and you've brought that geyser up to temperature, you might then leave the site and hand over that installation to the homeowner or to your client wherever you're doing the installation. Do they know and understand why the need is to have thermostatic temperature valves? Why the SANS code is there to protect you as a plumber from obviously doing the installation, as well as the end user from things such as scalding? Now, we know in severe circumstances, a poor plumbing installation can result in serious injury. In fact, sometimes even death, like an incorrect installed geyser. If the water, a hot water storage vessel, it could explode and it could harm the occupants inside. And we had a case study of this where a geyser exploded last year in one of our Toolbox talks. But a faulty installation could also cause severe burns, because hot water at the temperature of 60 degrees Celsius can cause serious scalding, even at a 5-second touch. But just in 5 seconds can cause serious scalding. So the reason many burns involve children is purely because of the education and training of our clientele that's not being happening. So please use the opportunity to speak to your clients about scalding and how they can prevent it, and what you have done as well as a plumber to adhere to the SANS standard and ensure effective thermostatic control by your installations as well. Now, when it comes to water, it carries bacteria, and bacteria carries disease. And as a plumber, you are constantly working with water that could potentially carry diseases. And this could be in the case of working in sewage, working with sewage, or even on waste piping, which could lead to you directly interacting with raw sewage. Now, diseases involving sewage can have instant effects on the human body. And you can see a quick spread of bacteria. Your three main health risks that are present in this type of situation are viruses, bacteria, and parasites. Now, these viruses, funguses, parasites, and viruses, all the bacteria, can cause intestinal, lung, and other infections. So one of the suggestions is to take a look at all your procedures, your policies that have in place, but also your equipment. How is your equipment being managed, and how are you preventing that cross-contamination? Now, we mentioned at the beginning of this Toolbox Talk that you should regularly clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces in an initiative to prevent COVID-19. But we can see the wisdom in doing the exact same thing, even though we are tired of hearing COVID-19 all the time, or we're so past that COVID-19 era. Yes, it is still there. We still want to ensure that we mitigate those dangers and stop the cross-contamination of any COVID-related illnesses. But at the same time, by doing or using those initiatives to stop the cross-contamination, you will also stop viruses, bacteria, and funguses from moving from your tools to your hands, to your mouth, into your body, or from your tools into your bakkie, and then potentially spreading that to your storeman. What about having that on your tools? Once you've packed them away, it's now on your clothes. And as soon as you get home, you are hugged by your child before you've had a chance to clean yourself. Well, if the equipment, your work practices, or even your personal protective equipment don't protect you from swallowing these agents, or others from swallowing these agents, you can get very sick. And work practices would be one of the main reasons why persons get this cross-contamination. They rely far too much on the PPE. Our work practices must include hygiene and housekeeping, ensuring that everything around us is prevented from cross-contamination, especially when working with potentially raw sewage and viruses, bacteria, and parasites that could live in the water. Now, when you are exposed to sewage or any contaminated soils around sewage or waste pipes, you can get things like tetanus, which is a toxin produced by bacteria common in most soil and sewage. You can get hepatitis A, B, or C. Water also drives certain bacteria such as E. coli. All of this has a potential to make you very sick. In fact, it could even cause fatal illnesses if it goes unchecked. Another disease that water brings with it is Legionnaires disease, or Legionella bacteria, which is found naturally in water. It's found naturally in water, it's found naturally in soil all over the world, but it only is found in low numbers. The way that it spreads is from scale, sediment, or algae in our plumbing, that the installations that are being done. So what can you do then as a plumber? Well, for one thing, what we want to do is when you go in to do any installation, any maintenance or any servicing of it, maybe just take a look at the actual plumbing. Is there any scale or sediment around the actual plumbing that you're working with? And that's not your fault. It could just be the user that is not maintaining it or calling you out enough to maintain it. And yes, we always advocate to the clients who do these installations to have some sort of service plan, have some sort of maintenance plan. And yes, they view it more as you wanting to try and make extra money because now it's a service plan and they don't see the need for it. But if they have the understanding of a poor service plan leading to Legionella, which, as you can see, there is a bacteria that can potentially cause Legionnaire's disease, or it could even cause a mild flu-like illness called Pontiac's fever. Now, the way this thing this bacteria actually moves, and we're going to be doing a whole Legionnaire's disease toolbox talk coming up in the next year as well, just to create awareness around Legionnaire's, is it attacks the immune system by attaching itself to the lungs. And this is because of naturally aspirated water, which then just allows your body to inhale it into your lungs. Once it's there, it starts reproducing until it gets strong enough to then attack the bloodstream. And once this happens, it's in your body, and you have the potential of getting Legionnaire's disease, which could be fatal, or Pontiac's fever. Legionnaire's disease is like a pneumonia type illness, and so it can become fatal if left unchecked. Now, all of this results from feeding off of scale, sediment, algae, and when water is at optimal temperatures for Legionnaire's disease to grow. All of this, and we're mentioning this again, all of this can be prevented. You cannot prevent water from heating up. You cannot prevent water from flowing into a house, but you can prevent the likelihood of getting diseases that are attached in the water by ensuring good housekeeping, education and training, and making sure that you yourself as a plumber clean the area before you do your servicing or even a reinstallation around your client's premises. So why not take the time out, plan, have extra time available when doing installations or servicing or checking on installations to make sure that you are not affected by these things. It could come upon you gradually, and you might not even realize where you got the flu from. And is it just the normal common flu? Is it a sign of COVID? Or is it Pontiac fever? Because we haven't been careful. Being able to diagnose that is almost impossible. Your doctor will not be able to figure out where you got it from. In other words, being safe, constantly ensuring our health when we are at work is of prime importance to all of you plumbers, because you are working with water on a daily basis. Now, the third area that we wanted to talk about is dangerous weather. So most of South Africa, we know this because our summer rainfall is coming up. Most of our rainfall is happening between November and March. In the Western Cape, obviously, it receives most of its rainfall during the winter time, May to August, which is automatically now over because we are moving into September. But you'll still have your sporadic storms happening, especially in and around the Cape Town area. But over most of South Africa, there is a definite rainfall pattern. And that's why they can say with almost certainty when our rainfall season will be coming. Your highest rainfall is going to occur, obviously, in your eastern and southern mountains, such as the Drakensberg, from Limpopo through Mpumalanga into KwaZulu-Natal, as well as your northern parts of Eastern Cape. So we are moving into that time. We are moving into the time where you're going to have large bodies of water. And there is the potential for flooding and drowning. Now, if you don't believe me, just look at what happened on the 22nd of May, 2022. This is just a few months ago. Heavy rain caused flooding and landslides in part of KZN. Around 240 millimeters of rain fell just in Mount Edgecombe alone within 24 hours. And you can see the devastating effects of this. Within that province, it left 400 people dead and 40,000 people displaced. So what was said by the government there was these heavy rainfalls have resulted in flooding of roads, human settlements, and damaged properties. We understand that some areas are inaccessible and have become islands at this point. This is due to the large amount of water. Yes, water can be dangerous. Now, how do you prevent something like this? How do you prevent a natural disaster? Well, you obviously cannot prevent a natural disaster. What you can do is prepare for a natural disaster. But flooding can also occur in and around our working environments, such as when you're digging trenches or digging excavations. So if you know that rain is coming, and we know it because we are starting with our summer months now, we can see it's getting a lot hotter. I'm up in Johannesburg in Hartbeespoort Dam, and so we can see the definite temperature changes here, and we can see that summer is on its way. But along with that, we also know that the rain will be coming. And when it rains, it pours, especially in our area. And it does have the potential to cause flooding. If you know that that is a potential, please do an inspection of your trenches and excavations before you go into them. Not only is it required by law, but it should become a work practice. In other words, it should become something that is behavior-based. And behavior-based doesn't start with an attitude, it starts with a behavior. In other words, it starts with a pattern. And that pattern should become part of how you work, how things are done in your company. One of the most important things to start with is always health and safety. So get into that mindset, get into the mindset of zero is no accident. And so we wanted to leave a little bit of time at the end of this Toolbox Talk, either to get questions from you to find out what you've experienced in the industry, but at the same time, it's also to explain why we are moving into the zero is no accident zone. So the safety thought for this week is safety doesn't happen by accident. And that's a slogan that you'll find all over the internet when it comes to occupational health and safety slogans. But the Zero is No Accident initiative, which is designed by FEM, is there to assist and bring awareness of the dangers as well as the preventative measures that can be taken to prevent incidents and accidents. Now, along with that, we have September coming up. And in the occupational health and safety space, we call it Safetember. That's another initiative in order to bring awareness of any issues in terms of health and safety that could potentially cause harm to you. Now, Toolbox Talks essentially do that throughout the whole year. So why is there a special month for it? Why is there a special drive? Well, it's because you're going to be hearing it a lot more often. We're going to be trying to talk to you a lot more often as plumbers, but we also want your feedback. So when it comes to Safetember, we're going to be looking at housekeeping. We're going to be looking at the OSH Act as well as the different regulations to find out where must we get our legislative drive from. What are we doing in terms of ergonomics? We spoke about the ergonomics regulations and the need to do an ergonomics risk assessment. Have you done anything about that? Let us remind you why it is so important to look at ergonomics. And then we end off with environmental safety. In this case, environmental safety, we are not looking at trees and flowers. We're talking about the working environment. Here, we're not going to be looking at slipping and tripping. We're going to be focusing more on ventilation, lighting, as well as the atmosphere that we are working in within our working environments. So again, the Zero is No Accident initiative is something that you are going to hear throughout the entire Safetember and moving on from here on out. So we encourage you to please visit FEM, their website. If you haven't got a letter of good standing yet, please also visit the FEM website in order to get your COID letter of good standing. They are assisting plumbers, especially if you are in the construction industry. But please get in touch with us if you do need assistance with this. So we want to say thank you very much for listening in, tuning into these Toolbox Talks every Tuesday morning. We look forward to Safetember coming up. And at the same time, we look forward to assisting you with Zero is No Accident on all of your sites as well. Thank you very much, Karim. We'll hand it back to you. And also to all of those who have been doing Prime, we know that a lot of you have already finished the first part, which are the first 3 courses. And starting on the 1st of September, you will now have access to the next part, which is HIRA, hazard identification and risk assessment. So we look forward to sending that out, which will happen in the next few days for our plumbers out there. So thank you very much for joining, and we really appreciate all of the support when it comes to Prime.